The following podcast is a Jill Devine media production.
Christianity has become known for judgy people, strange words, ancient stories, confusing rules, and a members-only mindset. This is why I stayed away from the church for so long, but it's not supposed to be that way. I'm Jill Devine, a former radio personality with 3 tattoos, a love for a good tequila, and who's never read the entire Bible. Yet here I am hosting a podcast about faith. The Normal Goes a Long Way podcast is your home for real conversations with real people using real language about how faith and real life intersect. Welcome to the conversation.
I had the pleasure of interviewing Justin Shiroma on this podcast. So many similarities between you and me, Justin, and we didn't even get into all of them, but Laura was listening and then she wrote down questions. So she is going to ask you questions and then we are going to chime in here and there to help with whatever you want to know and maybe learn a little bit more. So Laura, would you like to take it away with your first question?
Well, first of all, Justin, thank you so much for sharing that story. It's so important for us to recognize that God works uniquely in each person's life. And so to just be able to soak in the stories of how he has worked in your life brings me such joy and awe. Just to see your awakening and to hear what a difference it has made in your life and now in your family's life. So just thank you for
absolutely
for
I'm
that.
enjoying this.
That's amazing. I really appreciated that. I wanted to go back to something you said when Jill was asking about growing up in the church, and you mentioned that you and your family were holiday churchgoers. And I'm just curious because a lot of people are in that boat, and I'm so stubbornly against people belittling that, because I don't care if you're a holiday churchgoer, you're coming to church twice a year, right? That's awesome. God is going to work in that. So sometimes when Christians are oh, they only go to church on Christmas and Easter, as a negative, I'm but they're going to church. So I'm just curious from that perspective, when your family would go on Christmas and Easter, what would you walk away with? Just curious, what would you, in general, how would that impact you growing up?
Where are we going to eat? That's what I would ask first after church was done.
Because you all would go out to eat.
Yeah, where are we going to eat? Yeah. I'll talk about the before actually, and you mentioned about other Christians maybe degrading others that go on holidays. Well, I would be the type. Well, I think it's more insulting to go only on holidays and not go the rest of the year. So I don't want to be insulting to the church, so let's not go. And so I would even try to talk my way out of going to these holiday church services. I think it was just kind of a marker in the year, of that, a marker of a connect, okay, I went to church. I can say I would go to church, which now that's huge. I think that's huge to be able to say that you are connected, even if it is once or twice a year. And from experience, knowing that it's way better than not being connected at all. You'd go to the big Christmas mass and the messages are very similar and the same. And so it became it was more just a yearly event to go and be connected.
Thinking back to your high school years, you mentioned that you felt disconnected in a way because you would participate in the communion and everything as was expected of you. And yet, you didn't quite have an understanding of it, or did it feel like maybe it didn't impact you the way you thought it should? I was just curious if you could explore that disconnect a little bit.
Well, I wasn't really allowed to participate in communion in the Catholic Church without going, without being confirmed or that being my understanding, at least. And I even took that lack of understanding after my own recent baptism. And shout out to Pastor Jim. Actually, I did this, and I didn't understand receiving communion, in our church, and so I took the kids up to receive a blessing, but then I refused the communion, and Pastor Jim offered to me 3 times. I said no. I said no 3 times. I said no. Looking back, after I actually reached out to Pastor Chuck and having that connected, I felt comfortable asking him, what is this all about? Because I needed to understand the practice and the significance of it in order for me to truly receive, because that's the way I felt growing up, that I wasn't good enough to receive this
Gotcha.
blessing. And so, yes, I reached out to Pastor Chuck and asked him, and he explained it to me, and I'm like, oh, and then I thought back to the Pastor Jim offering me several times, and I'm like, oh, I don't want him to think that I don't receive Christ. I don't want him to think that, but it was more of my understanding and a reflection of my experience of oh, I'm not allowed to because I haven't gone through the right steps.
Gotcha.
And it's interesting you bring that up because kind of the same, but kind of opposite. So my husband was, I believe, baptized. I don't even know and confirmed. I can't remember the first time that we attended Messiah, and it was time for communion. And he and I stood up because it's a Lutheran church, and I knew that I was confirmed Lutheran and baptized Lutheran, but still didn't really understand all of that. Now I'm thinking about it. I still probably don't understand all of it. And he stood up with me. I'm like, you can't go. You're not Lutheran. And he said, God doesn't care. I'm taking this. And I was like, wowza. Either he's really pissing somebody off in the church or he is really right. And it started this thing in my head. And there were so many different things. Like I would go to a Catholic church with my sister when I, wanted to go to a Christmas mass or whatever. And I did feel shame that I had to stay in the pew when they would go get communion. And I was always like, well, I just don't understand why I can't. And I remember this too, when she got married. So she converted to Catholicism when she got married, and as her maid of honor, technically I was not supposed to be on the altar with her. And they had a father who was amazing. And they're like, okay, just when he goes to give you your communion, just nod your head, put your head down, and nobody's going to. And all these things now I'm understanding why it's so confusing and why it's so difficult. And so when you said that you didn't want to take the communion because you didn't feel worthy enough, or I'm paraphrasing, but like,
and didn't understand.
I always thought it was just against the rules.
Yeah. So, yeah. Same
and so
like
I'm
guilt. Like,
yes,
like I wasn't supposed to do that,
right?
Or why don't I get to do that?
Right.
Having to sit there and feel again excluded, and that was my experience and my perception. Again, I go back to not understanding the practice and everything like that, and so that just led to the overall feeling of I'm not as good as my buddies who grew up in Catholic school that went through all of this Sunday school, and I didn't do that. And so they're, from a religious standpoint, are better Christians than I am. Is the feeling.
So let's talk about this moment when you heard from God.
So cool.
So cool. I thought it was interesting how you explained it, that it didn't come through your head. It came from your chest, like almost this gut knowing that he was speaking to you. Have you felt that again?
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like once you feel it, you don't stop feeling it. It's like a channel's been open, and it's whether you're receiving or you're just whether you're actually receiving or just listening. Just that it seems to feel there. And I think that's what I hope. That's what all Christians feel, that connection. Like many instances in the Bible, it came from fire. It came from a place of turmoil and struggle, pain, and it was almost a need for it to happen to heal me. It was not a good place. It was, looking back, that as amazing as we can speak about the moment being, it doesn't happen when things are sunshine and rainbows.
Not usually. Yeah.
And so there was pain attached. There was conflict, turmoil, like I said, fire in that moment. So yeah, definitely not easy, but I think in following and kind of, do I feel that feeling? It's almost like, they talk about people when you go to maybe go to church service and you feel like the pastors are talking directly to you. It's almost like every service, my hand was being held. Like, I'm talking to you. I'm talking every word was hitting. Like, this is for me. He's talking to me. This is for me. And, over the course of a year, not every Sunday was like that. In the very beginning, it was. One of the first series following our baptism was the Broken series. And that's what I was. I was a broken man. I was a broken person. And that needed to be put together. And I needed to understand the message, they talked about the gold holding the pot together. And that's what I needed was God. When I say early in the beginning, needed my hand held, couldn't receive the message and then find my way. I needed to receive the message. God speaks to me, and then he's like, okay, and now here's the way. Now you are broken, terribly broken. Here's the message from your church on Sunday that my people are talking to you and you're listening to, and this is something you need to hear. And it went on there, and then, time went on, and it became a journey of searching. I was then searching for more opportunity and became FCA. I met Dave Shaw, who is one of the directors of FCA, and we meet weekly for a discipleship and Bible study. And it's wild because I kept thinking, I need to expand my days that I am engaged with God, not just Sundays. I need to find something. And he calls me on the phone, just calls me. Hey man, you wanna do this thing with me? I'm like, dude, were you just reading my mind? Mm-hmm. And it just happens that way. Leading up to this, not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before would have marked 1 year from my baptism. And Pastor Jim's up there going through this list, followed by God's not done with you yet. I'm like, wow, like the whole year, and how, there was a lot that went through. I lost both my arms last year. I tore both bicep tendons. I had to have surgery. And so as my kids were just learning to stand up and walk, so all this time when they're standing up and falling, I couldn't pick them up. Needless to say, my wife hated me for having twins and couldn't change one diaper for 8 months. But we got through it. It's been a very tough year in some aspects, but a lot of great things came out of the year. And starting with the FCA, getting involved with more people, making God, making it a more active part of my life, and striving to make God first. And that's been one of the hardest things, is I think as a person that was always about himself first. And, I'm kind of person too, like, I can take care of this. I can fix this. I can do this. I don't need help from anybody. Like that type of person, control type person, going through the year and then slowly making that progress of trying to put God first. Still, it's probably at 10%. It's better than 0.
Yep.
Yeah.
And to hear the message, like, as amazing as your year, your baptism birth year was, I'm not done with you yet. Just being reminded that how loved I was and how needed I was. And those are feelings I did not feel a year prior. I didn't feel like I was worth anything. So it's just been a crazy, wild, awesome, amazing journey.
So amazing. And thank you for that reminder that he's not done with any of us yet. We are all a work in progress. And the fact that he sent you someone to meet with regularly and learn more about God and to dig deeper into what it means to be a Christian. You mentioned being discipled, that to have somebody who can invest in you, that is what the Christian walk is supposed to look like. It's not something we're supposed to do alone. So what a blessing. And that came through FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And maybe that's a good place for us to wrap up, is learning more about what is Fellowship of Christian Athletes and how can we connect our high schoolers to it. So do you mind giving us just an overview of what does that organization do and what's going on in it in your school?
FCA is bringing athletes and coaches together to fellowship and walk through Christ's teachings and trying to let him be the light that we walk toward, even through our abilities, with our abilities and our character, and the way that we can use ourselves as tools to reflect Christ's light in others. Sports offer us an opportunity to see ourselves in a different light, to see ourselves in a place where we can express ourselves, a place where we can challenge ourselves, where we can experience many seasons of life in small, safe opportunities, like a game or practice. We're going to experience those ups and downs, and how we walk that path. I walk those paths. I walk those many seasons that we experience can really lead us in our real lives as we move past athletics and become men or women of Christ moving forward in our lives. And so, FCA seeks to connect us in that way with a focus on sports, but of course with the intention of making us better Christ followers and fellowship together. And so building relationships like we talked about and connecting. And, I've met a ton, like I said, when I first started, I've heard of FCA, never went to a meeting, never knew anything about it other than the term Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Probably something I would have completely stayed away from before. But that's all I know. Those 3 words was about all I knew about it. But, again, since then, I've met other coaches and other teachers that are involved or have previously been involved, who jump up at the opportunity to say, hey, I know about this. I can help. And I'm like, amazing. I need help.
Yeah.
But again, God putting those people in my life, but me seeing these people now as adults in their own lives, and what their lives are like, and how they walk through life, having this, I would say, this experience or this fellowship behind, with them or in their experience bank, and saying like, wow, this is somebody that I would like to be like him, or I would like to be like her.
Mm-hmm.
And their path came through FCA, and so that's what I think we're about, is just growing together through sports. And it's truly growing together, athletes and coaches together.
So amazing. And you can go to the FCA website and see if your school has a chapter, right?
Yep, fca.org. And there's also an Instagram page. And
I never heard of it until now.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And you were a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Not all schools have a chapter, but they could. And these are public schools we're talking about.
Yeah, and we're so fortunate that we're able to be a actually school sponsored club, recognized by the school, and that I think that is one amazing step for all of us, is that we can be recognized for our beliefs and gather, and it's acceptable. Of course, within our frame, but
right.
The kids, we walk around and the kids will say, public school, we can be Christians.
Absolutely.
And we can fellowship together. We can meet and we can talk and we can share, and I think that to me, was amazing to just see. It was my goal. That was my goal to provide. I told the kids, this is my goal. I wanted to be able to open up and create a platform that this could happen. And just to hear it come back and the kids say, wow, we can do this. We are doing this.
Mm-hmm.
We are, hey, look at us. We're in the building, public school building, talking about God, reading Bible verses, discussing it, sharing our experiences. And it's like, wow, cool. Everybody's like, cool, everybody loves it.
Talk about full circle. Because, you said just over a year ago, you didn't even believe in God. And here you are the sponsor of FCA in your school, and God is bringing people to you through that. That's one of the amazing things. When we step out and we say yes to God, we think often that we're doing it to serve others, but He is giving you so much through you stepping out, all these relationships that are then pouring into you and growing your faith. So it's just a beautiful example of how God works, the good in everything. And a lot of times we don't get to see it on this side of heaven, but this is such a great story of us getting to see it in action and like it's happening now.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is amazing. I couldn't do it without him. None of it. I think the realization that I can't do anything without God helped me in a lot of the struggles I was having before I found God. The feelings of not being good enough, or the feelings that I needed to do something and take care of a situation or be the one to make things happen. That's a lot of pressure to shoulder. And when you feel that way about everything, and like I said, I for some reason would take these huge societal issues and bear the weight of it as if it was my problem. That was, once I realized that we can put that in God's hands, and I can put all of everything that I have in God's hands, and everything he's given me is from God's hands. It took the pressure of me feeling that I needed to do something, or even the feeling that I'm not good enough. It's not about me anymore. And coming to that realization was huge for me. And do I struggle? We struggle every day, every single day. And is Satan working on me every day? Absolutely. Do those feelings come back? Yes. And it does take a conscious, active effort to put it back where it belongs. Is it perfect? No. Does it carry on for days? Yup. Weeks? Yup. Sometimes, I'm fortunate that I do have joined this discipleship with Dave, and we meet because it's a solid connection that we have, and we reflect every week, and I can say I wasn't very good last week. I didn't, try not to feel the guilt of it, but saying, acknowledge that I could definitely do better. And I would say if I didn't have that, it could carry on longer.
Yeah.
It really helps to connect and link up with people that are going to support you. And
amazing. Do you have any final thoughts, Jill?
There's just so many similarities between us. And I will say the one major difference, and we talked about this with Chuck, was I don't have the scientific background as far as digging into that. Like, I've chosen not to. And it's even more inspiring to me to see someone who has done that. And there's a lot of people that do that, and you have still found God. Because that is one of those things where, from my understanding, from what I've heard, that's the game changer. They're like, okay, this is science. This is what I'm going with. And I can't do that. I can't do that right now. Like Chuck said, maybe down the line. And he tells people too, like, do the research, look at science, but also look at Jesus. And so I don't know. I just think that is such a deep thing that you were into, a big rabbit hole, and to come out of it.
You want to know the answer to that? Why I got out of it? If God didn't write the story so beautifully and intricately, and he just made things happen, where would the faith be? How would people have faith if they've just seen it happen?
If they could prove it. So to the audience listening, you have a story too. And we've had the honor of listening to Justin's. But I just want to encourage you to reflect on your own life. Who are the people that God has put in your life from childhood through now? Maybe just those little touch points, a word, a service, a reaching out. And who's in your life now? What would it look like to open your heart a little bit to the possibility that God is at work and he wants to be closer to you than he is right now? Justin's given us a lot to think about in that regard and a lot of hope. And so we just leave you today knowing that there is a God who is for you. Until we meet again, take care.